This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers Podcast and True Crime Today. This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Brueski, Stacey Cole, and Todd Michaels.
We are talking about the case of Donna Adelson, the tragedy that is the murder of Dan Markel and the sentencing now of the matriarch in all of this. Donna Adelson herself, with Shavaun Scott, psychotherapist and author. We're now going to jump more over to Donna herself, because Donna didn't walk into her sentencing with remorse. She walked into it with a script, a shaky, erratic, emotionally splintered script, and a plea to recast herself as the second victim in the murder of Dan Markel. Yes, she went there. She tried to do it. She swore on her life. She cried over her grandson. She declared herself the innocent woman without a parking ticket, convinced that she had nothing to hide. And there was nothing but hatred and lies that were all piling up that created this. We may pause a little bit as we go through watching Donna Adelson's court performance, but let's begin. This is Donna in court the other day, having her voice heard.
Okay. Is this loud enough, Judge?
I can hear you.
Thank you for letting me speak. My son-in-law, Dan Markel, was a fine and decent man. He was well-educated and passionate about his career. He was a good son-in-law, but more importantly, he was a caring and loving father. On July 18th, 2014, his car was followed, leaving his home. It should have been just like any other day, an ordinary day in the life of Ben and Lincoln's father, but it wasn't. He didn't know when he left his boys off at daycare that would be the last time he would see them, and the last time they would see him. He didn't know when he went to the gym afterwards that would be the last time he would exercise. And he didn't know when he drove home that his life would end within minutes. Danny wasn't just being followed, he was being hunted. He was brutally murdered in broad daylight, sitting in his car, in his garage, by vicious killers. I cannot imagine the terror he felt when he saw a gun pointed at him through the window of his car. I cannot conceive of his heroic efforts to stay alive during the hours after the attack. Danny died in the early morning hours of July 19th. His death is a loss to his children, his parents, his sister, all of us in his family, his friends, his colleagues in the legal community, and to his students at FSU Law School. Danny's boys each have a photo of themselves with their Abba, their dad, beside their beds. They grew up kissing the framed photo and saying, "Good night, Abba, I love you." The pictures and memories are all they have because cruel, cold-hearted people took him from all of us who loved him. My heart was broken when Danny died. My grandsons were going to grow up without the father who loved them. I wondered, how could we help these boys through this trauma? It was then that my husband and I knew that the best way to honor Danny's memory would be to share with these children an abundance of love, the love that Danny would have given them if he were alive.
Let's pause for a second of this bullshit show.
Yeah, thank you. Good grief.
I mean, this is a woman who's joking about dressing the kids up as Hitler Youth to torture Danny. I mean, what are we witnessing here?
sure feels performative, doesn't it? I don't know that anybody would buy this. And I think she's been thinking about what is going to score her points here. And she came up with, well, let me mimic what looks like empathy. I'm gonna do an acting job here about what empathy would look like. But yeah, when you know the whole story, you know everything that she said about him over the years, it doesn't jive.
No, it doesn't. And she was incredibly cruel to him behind the scenes, behind the curtain. And to come out here now and just, oh, Danny, Danny was a wonderful man. Get screwed, lady. I mean, really.
What is going through someone's mind like this, like through Donna's, as she's delivering this sort of thing? Is it part of the narcissism that prohibits her from being aware of her surroundings and aware of the audience, that all these people are aware of the horrible things that are on the record? Her own attorney in this actual hearing even admitted to it time and time again, which I found kind of odd. Like, why do you keep bringing this up, Jackie? Of the horrible things that she had said in those letters and those angry emails and such. And yet she's trying to pitch this as she's just this loving grandmother. And she put Abba's picture by their bedside, the kids, so they can kiss it goodnight. And because of the wisdom of her and Harvey, they're going to show love that their father couldn't because he's gone. I mean, it's vile, but clearly she doesn't seem to think that what's coming out of her mouth is that disgusting.
No, that's the perceptual distortion of people with personality disorders. They see the world in a very unrealistic way, and they don't understand that other people see things differently. The other thing that pops into my head whenever I see a lot of footage of her is, we see we'll say narcissistic traits and qualities. We also see a lot of histrionic qualities, and that's the tendency to do big emotions in a very shallow way and in a manipulative, self-serving way. And that's the other quality. Those are in the cluster B family of personality disorders, so they overlap a lot. But this intense drama, this acting, and there's always a reason for it that's self-serving.
Is that the whole, is a mic okay, Judge? And then all of a sudden, and Danny, oh, Danny, boy. And like the vibrato in the voice.
100%. That's histrionic stuff. And as I always say, where do you see a lot of histrionic personality types? In Hollywood, because they make good actors and actresses.
But they can reel it in to be believable. Donna doesn't seem that believable. That's the problem with someone like Donna, is they think, and the ones that are good, that think they're good, well, then that makes a perfect actor, doesn't it? Because they're able to do it all and pull it off. But then you have so many of ones that are not good, that just live amongst us, that end up getting sympathy and empathy. Why do we as a society fall for these people when they're out there? Because obviously Donna's 70-something. She's pulled this act off most of her life to some degree of success without being imprisoned for it yet. It's finally led her there because her actions took her there. But she's been able to do this, and enough people, clearly even some that came out the other day that hadn't seen her forever, still buying the act that she's this wonderful, great person. Is that the sad part of the goodness of people, that we're trying to see the goodness in people and we fall for the bullshit?
I think that's a really, really insightful comment. People who are not manipulative, liars, performative, don't assume that other people are. They believe what they're told, and that's not a character flaw on their part. They just assume that because they don't manipulate, that other people don't manipulate. And so I think it's a bit naive, and the older we get, we learn more, that you can't believe everything you hear. But for many people, when they particularly if they only know the person superficially, they go along with the story because, that's the kind of person that they are.
And we always tend to think about things through our own prisms. And if we have this idea that, okay, like on a level of 1 to 10, how much am I capable of manipulating someone? Like, here's 10, here's 1, and you kind of have your range of, like, if I really needed to, I could go, my 10 is here. But the thing is, not everybody's 10 is there. Sometimes that 10 is like, rip the knob off. Your thing doesn't even go anywhere near it. Their 10 is like a 5,000 compared to what your 10 is. Yeah. But we're always still thinking, and like on that scale of 1 to 10, what is it for you? What's your pain? And it's sometimes, I think, unfathomable to us that there's other human beings out there that their 10s are that far out, that far beyond the comprehension of what we would even contemplate going to.
100%. And I think all human qualities, you can say they're on a continuum. And that's what makes personality analysis so interesting, is looking at the different qualities and how much does this person have that one. And when we get into the personality disorders, they're off the norm chart. You know, that's what makes them so special.
Do we need to do better should we be doing better at learning how to identify these sort of things in people around us? Is that something that if you were to go to the education system or something, and just in general would you be saying, I'd like people from a younger age to be able to learn about these things and be able to identify them in a healthy way for their own self-protection? I mean, do you think that would be a skill that would be beneficial to society, or would it make us communicate less with each other because we'd all be scared?
That is the driving force behind so much of my writing and why I write the books I write, because, if I had known then what I know now, I would have made very different life choices. I have a dear friend who many years ago decided she wanted to be a therapist. So she went and got her master's degree and did her internship. I was actually her supervisor, and she was really good at it, but she ended up saying, this is way too much stress for the amount of money I earn. I'm going to go back to my other career. And she said, but I don't regret getting the degree because now I know the people to avoid and the men I don't want to date. And I said, then it's worth it. It's worth it. Hard way to get the lessons. But I think we need to educate more about it.
What makes a person become like Donna and Harvey? Are they born this way? Or is this something that just develops over time?
I believe it's eating tacos from Jack in the Box at a young age.
No, I did a lot of that. I did a lot of that.
Careful, Tony.
You're
Shavaun,
calling
it's
me
clearly
out.
your question.
You're calling me out. Yeah, there's a lot of really good new research on personality and looking at the personality disorders. And there is a lot more genetics involved in it than what we used to think. We used to think, going back 40, even 30 years ago, that all personality people were basically born a blob of clay and they were molded by their environment. And that's what made them what they are. In truth, looking particularly at identical twins who were separated at birth and adopted by very different families, you find really similar personalities. And it's absolutely fascinating. If anybody want to look it up, that you can look up Minnesota twin studies and personality, and there's just some amazing stories about the similar ways people developed. So, and there's a lot of other DNA research as well. I'm trying to remember the book. I can't remember the book, but I've got a really good book on my coffee table about the power of DNA and what we know now that we didn't used to know. So I think it's always a combination of we're born with certain tendencies, and then the environment can reinforce it or tamp it down. And so I would guess that Donna was raised in a home where there was a lot of these kind of narcissistic histrionic behaviors going on. And kids, who may be born with those tendencies, you can teach them not to go there, and you can modify that. But I think you can say for all of us, we're a combination of the weird combination of DNA that we got from our family lineage. And that doesn't mean we come out exactly like mom and dad, because it's all the way the genes interact and then the way that we were raised. And if we know psychopathy, the tendency to be a psychopath, is very loaded for genetics. But if you catch that early with a kid, you can teach them not to give in to maybe what those worst impulses are.
And you can tease that out of yourself. You can change your future. If you are genetically predisposed to become a narcissist, you can identify that in yourself and do something about it, correct?
Yes, yes. I think it's the key is, are people with certain tendencies motivated for personal growth? And sometimes they're not. But there are a lot of tendencies. I've got a lot of OCD tendencies. My dad had OCD, and I have to work with myself. It doesn't really come out in behaviors, but it can come out in an obsessive thinking style. I learned that early on in therapy. That's something I've modified over the years, and I can let a lot of that go. And it all depends on how motivated a person is.
And that's the biggest thing. They have to be motivated, and they have to not be sitting there going, well, that's how I am. I'm happy with who I am. And the thing is, a lot of folks with those personality styles, it's worked for them.
Yeah.
And so going the other way doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, even if it would be beneficial in the long run. But that's why Psychonex, new Psychonex, just one spray to each nostril, will cure the psychopath in you. Even if it's genetic, it removes it.
Wouldn't it be great if there was something like that? It would be amazing.
Don't take Psychonex if you're allergic to Psychonex, by the way. Just so you know. That's my, it's my Mucinex.
Could cause erections for longer than 4 hours.
That shit's a bitch. I'm kidding. Let's continue on with more of watching Donna, rattle through her last moments above water.
It's interesting how the state can't make up its mind about who is what they call the, quote, mastermind behind this murder. In both of Catherine Magbanaw's trials, the state claimed she was the mastermind behind Danny's murder. In my son Charlie Adelson's trial, they claimed he was the mastermind. And now in my trial, they claimed that this grandma, was the mastermind behind the murder. I had no idea that other people planned to cut Danny's life short. And the people who did this are exactly where they deserve to be. But I had no knowledge that this horrible, evil act was going to take place. If I had become aware of this plan before Danny was murdered, I would have stopped it. With not one iota of actual evidence, the state convinced a Tallahassee jury that I solicited and conspired with other people to have Danny killed. Where is the evidence prior to the murder? The evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that the state needed to prove their case. Where is the evidence before July 18th, 2014 at 10:50 in the morning?
Before you continue, Mrs. Adelson, as it relates to this statement, is the defense trying to re-argue the trial?
Yeah.
No, Judge, just giving Mrs. Adelson an opportunity to be heard.
Mrs. Adelson, you certainly can continue. However, the court can take into consideration the utter lack of remorse that you are displaying.
Not what you want the judge to say to you.
Desire to do so.
Where is the evidence before July 18th, 2014 at 10:50 a.m.
Nothing
that
outlasts
revealed
the
that
Donna.
I had any involvement in this vile and horrific act? Where is the solicitation and conspiracy evidence? The state needed to show that there was evidence before the murder to convict me. The state couldn't show that because there wasn't any evidence. They were trying an innocent person. It makes you wonder if the jurors were sleeping when the state had Sergeant Corbett on the stand for hours. Their own star witness testified that my phone was never, I repeat, never at my son's house on the night of the murder. The state's theory that my husband and I dropped off money to my son was blown out of the water by their own witness. And yet, the state continued to push that story, that lie of the so-called money drop to the jury through the remainder of the trial. And the jury bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. Reasonable doubt. Many months ago, my attorneys filed a motion for a change of venue. An expert witness testified that Tallahassee had been barraged with over 9 years of negative social media, printed news, television news, and podcast publicity about my family. He explained to the court, both with evidence and demonstratives, that for me to receive a fair trial, it needed to be held in any of the researched and designated areas in the state of Florida other than Tallahassee. All I wanted was a level playing field, but the court wanted the trial here in the hotbed of Tallahassee. I sat through 3 days of jury selection. 180 potential jurors were asked if they had developed an opinion in my case. Those that answered yes also added, "I believe she is guilty." Not one person, not one, said, "I think she may be innocent." That should have been a clue to the court to grant our motion for a change of venue, but the court denied the motion. One of my jurors admitted during jury selection that she had background information concerning what one of the state's witnesses would be testifying about. Why was she allowed to be on my jury?
What moment?
Another juror.
Mrs. Fulford,
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Mr. Zellman, again, this has nothing to do with elocution of any sort. This is a raising of grievances, which are properly given to the appellate court.
Festivus.
What does any
right.
of this have to do with sentencing?
Just one moment, please.
Please.
What happened to Danny is unforgivable. But I am an innocent woman convicted of this terrible crime without evidence. Danny was a brilliant legal scholar. He would have been appalled at the total lack of justice that went on during my trial. He would have been embarrassed to have his name associated with any of it. There are 2 crimes here. The first was Danny being viciously murdered. The second one is taking my life, the life of an innocent woman. Convicting me should not be retribution for Danny's
2 crimes.
death. That is not justice for Dan. I've always respected the law. I've never gotten a parking ticket, but I'm going to prison for a murder I did not commit. I do intend to file an appeal so that hopefully I have the opportunity to be given a fair trial outside of Tallahassee. 11 years ago, Danny was murdered and taken from all of us who loved him. For the past 9.5 years, the state has broadcast to the world, including Danny's parents and sister, that I hired hitmen to kill him. Never in a million years would I have wanted Danny to be harmed or killed, nor could I ever do something that would leave these 2 small boys to grow up without him. I love these boys more than life itself. This is a lifetime of loss for these children. They didn't deserve this. His family didn't deserve this. Danny didn't deserve this. And so, as I appear before you today, Your Honor, I promise you with my whole heart, I swear to you on my life, I was not involved in any way with Danny's murder. I was not.
And
Okay,
thanks
then.
for playing, Donna.
And scene.
Shavaun, what the hell was that?
She sure alternates between frail and angry pretty quickly, doesn't she? And why do you think insulting the judge and jury is going to bring mercy at this point? A lot of speculation is about her crying with no tears. And, I always, with body language and those kind of things, I hesitate to make rules because we're all different. And some people cry in a more contained way. But this the crying doesn't look genuine. Again, the whole thing has a performative feel, and this is if we want to say narcissistic collapse, people go into, when they're humiliated, they can go into emotional dysregulation where they get really angry. Sometimes they get very depressed, and that's what it looks like. She's pissed off.
It felt like she was grasping for all, like a kid, that emotional dysregulation where it's just like, I'm just going to grasp at anything and everything and throw it out here and see what sticks. That really kind of felt like where she was going with this. It didn't make a lot of sense. It didn't benefit her in any way, shape, or form. It was performative so she could say her part to an audience that doesn't care, that she thinks gives a shit. And they don't, because there's nobody there. But she's so not seeing this. The distortion or cognitive distortion of reality is such that she thinks there's a crowd of people sitting there waiting and cheering her on, but there's no one. There's no one. It's her and Harvey and the weird guy that probably had a crush on her a long time ago. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It was a weird guy. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why you're showing up all these years later saying lovely things about the woman. So there's some conjecture. I don't know. But it's a weird one to grasp onto, how she can go from the highs to the lows and at the end accept no responsibility at all, even for the things that were proven, even for the things that her attorney, even like I was saying, was bringing up, going, she did this. It's like that doesn't even matter. She glosses over that as if it means nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, why is that? I mean, I get when you're on your tirade. Is she not seeing that in that moment in time, or does it just not matter?
I think she doesn't see it, and it just doesn't matter. Even if there are those little moments where the denial is, breaking through, but it just really shows her perceptual distortions. And yes, she thinks there's an audience out there watching this and applauding, and that lack of awareness that people are looking at her as the perpetrator and a very despicable person at this point.
How do you think Donna's going to fare in prison?
Well, she knows how to wield charm, and she's highly manipulative. She can also play frail grandma and try to garner sympathy. So I think she'll do better in prison than probably what most of us would do. She's got those manipulative skills.
She's going to make a lot. She already has made a lot of people think, oh, she's not going to do well there. She's just this old frail woman, and it's not. I don't know. I think
I'm not buying it.
The way that once she was done speaking and there was nothing more to say, there were no more tears from her. When the judge let her have it, when the judge laid down the sentence, she just sat there defiant with her smirk. I think that said a lot. I mean, what did you glean out of that? That she wasn't sitting there bawling her eyes out or acting manipulative or doing anything. The performance was over when the judge finally gave the actual sentence. She just stood there stoic, which was, I mean, again, if you're really overwhelmed with emotion, one would think you'd still be overwhelmed with emotion, not suddenly, let's flip the switch.
Yeah, it's that switch flipping that makes it look so suspect. I agree completely. It's she vacillated all over the place during this speech, and I think the anger for me was the real emotion, the frailty, the look how fragile I am, I'm grandma. That was really the manipulative part, but the anger was what's really underneath that.
Do you think she's just going to be this prison monster? Do you think she's going to be like the lead bitch in prison with that anger? I could see it, because she's really a manipulator. Yeah.
My guess is she'll first try to come off as, I'm this kindly old woman who's been persecuted, and see what kind of points she can score with that. But yeah, you wouldn't want to cross her, really. You wouldn't, because she's sneaky in that way.
What would you say to the Markel kids? And I'll call them the Markel kids because they're the Markel kids. Have been renamed the Adelsons. If they're watching this at some point, trying to put their life together and figuring out their history, and this is a little documented section of it, and like, well, I wonder what people thought of this moment in Grandma's life. What would your message be to them if they're watching this a few years older as young adults?
Boy, this is going to be one that will take a lifetime to unpack, and there's just not going to be an easy way through it for them. That's where my empathy goes, is for them, of course, for Dan, but also for these kids. It's going to take a lot of work with what story was real. What were the good things that I got from my grandparents, and what is all this other stuff, and how will they integrate that? Who knows? But it's gonna be a lifelong process for them.
That's a hard thing when you have good things and good pieces, and then you find out bad information, or good information that's bad about people that you thought were good.
Exactly.
I guess that's the way I want to say it. To square all that up, because there probably are a lot of happy memories of grandma and things then together, but then to find out that person played a major role in destroying a huge part of your life and taking something from you in such an unimaginable way, that. How do you square that up? Is it okay to still, I mean, there's no right or wrong to any of this, but that I think would be a hard one to square, the still feeling that conflictingness of, well, there was goodness here, but there's all this evil over here. So what does that mean? I mean, how do you begin to wrap your mind around something like that?
It's super hard. And my guess is that when she was with those kids, she doted on them. She probably spoiled them. She adored them in her histrionic way. And it would not surprise me if they will never be able to accept reality. They'll never be able to accept the other side of the story. I don't know that. But that would also be one outcome that I could see happening. And the other way, how do you integrate the reality with the grandma that you knew and loved, that you felt loved you? That's a hard one.
And I guess, healthy is how you define it for that individual. Healthy is not what I make it or you make it. It's how that person's going through their life. What is the healthy route there? If you were to just believe the bullshit, but it's not going to affect any other aspect of your life, you have your own identity, your own everything out here is over here. That just happens to be part of your past, but you'd rather believe that Santa Claus exists because it's easier and it feels more fun than not. Essentially, is that okay to do, or is dealing with reality on reality's terms always going to be the healthiest outcome for anybody, or is that very much an individual thing?
I go with it's an individual thing. I mean, I have a bias for reality always. I think that's probably the preferred way to go. Yeah. But if some people just can't accept it, then their story is going to be their story, and I support their survival. I mean, what people have to do to get through the day ultimately, and live as good of a life as they possibly can, considering their history. It is an excellent question.
I like that you support their survival. That's a good way of looking at it for folks who've had to endure things like that. Yeah, because it is such an individual thing, and it's not about, All right, Shavaun Scott, as always, thank you so much. Your book, Nightbird, this is the memoir that's out now in the minds of mass killers. Check them out wherever books are sold. Go search and enjoy. It's going to wrap up the episode. For Todd, for Stacy, for Shavaun, I'm Tony Brueski. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
As we've been watching the Donna Adelson trial and obviously making a lot of narcissistic or observations about narcissistic behavior during this. One thing we've learned is that narcissists tend to make things about themselves, even when they're not about them. Harvey was another one of the prime examples in the sentencing of Donna Adelson, who made such out-of-touch comments when he came to give his victim impact statement that it's really, I don't know, kind of breathtaking. You're sending an innocent person to prison. You have taken my wife and my life as well. And for what? This is not justice. This is vengeance, and it's wrong. Well, vengeance, there should be vengeance against someone who's conspired to kill your former son-in-law. It's how our system works. But it's vengeance directed towards those who are perpetrators of crimes against others. And guess what? Your wife and your son happen to be. How about you, Harvey? What did you know about any of this? It's not a great idea when there's a lot of people circling and a lot of people looking at this under a microscope to raise your hand and go, look at me. And Harvey, you've been really good at shutting the F up for a long time and not saying much. And, I don't think a lot of us had much of an opinion other than this is, I actually thought he was more of the victim of his family than not. But I don't know that I feel that way after watching his speech in court the other day. What do you think? Tell me your comments and thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. Certainly, you're going to be upset. Your wife's going away for the rest of her natural life, and you're 81. You're about to kick off, too. I don't know if there's going to be any Harvey-Donna conjugal visits in the future on this planet. So I get he's upset. But not upset that his grandkids, the people that he supposedly loves, lost their father. And then to go and further insult the actual family of the murder victim as well. That happened too. Anyway, I want to talk about the person in this story who hasn't been charged but keeps showing up in the receipts. Because you just put a giant target on your head, Harvey. You could have sailed off into the ether, maybe found some new love at the Villages. But then you went and opened your mouth. And then you made a lot of people like me and others who are digging deeper into this case go, I was kind of looking over here, but I think we need to look over here a little bit more too. And I think there's a lot of investigators, and I'm going to guess Georgia Kappelman knows a hell of a lot more than any of us do, of what's still to come. Harvey, I should say, innocent, never been charged with anything. Obviously maintained his innocence yesterday and maintained the innocence of Donna yesterday as well. All a big witch hunt, right? Well, let's look further, shall we? Let's. The man who sat in the front row, who spoke up for his wife, who insists the system got it wrong, and yet his phone number, his movements, and his name keep resurfacing in the evidence and filings around the murder of Dan Markel. Weird. We're going to walk that line carefully and clearly because this isn't about being inflammatory. This is about what's in the record when you trace the timeline and ask the simple questions. What did Harvey Adelson likely know? And what does the evidence say about whether the state could ever bring a case against him? Should they? Could they? Will they? Let's set a fair anchor. As of today, Donna Adelson has been sentenced to life in prison for her role in the murder of her former son-in-law, Florida State law professor Dan Markel. She maintains she's innocent and intends to appeal, but the court sentence stands. In that same courthouse, Harvey spoke in her defense and presented the public face of a husband who believes his wife was wrongfully convicted. That moment matters because it's his posture, his insistence, and because it sits in sharp contrast to what we're going to walk through. The pieces of evidence and sworn testimony that bring his name back to the center of gravity around this crime. And here's a critical disclaimer up front. Harvey Adelson has not been charged with any crime. Neither has his daughter, Wendy. That is the state of play right now. From the beginning, this case has turned on two pillars: motive and movement. Motive shows up unmistakably in messages and calls. During Donna's trial, jurors were shown the 2014 of March messages in which Donna referred to arranging a birthday present for Harvey. Prosecutors argued that this was coded language for solving the problem that stood between Wendy and a relocation to South Florida with the children. The defense did not concede that interpretation. But you don't have to accept the code theory to understand why it matters. It identifies a beneficiary and centers Harvey in the family grievance, prosecutors said, at the heart of this plot. The point is not the cake, it's the context. Movement follows motive. In court, law enforcement mapped phone movements and call patterns around key events, including messages such as Donna's text to Charlie that she was outside your house around the time planning conversations were alleged to be taking place. That by itself is not a conviction, it's proximity. In conspiracy cases, proximity plus communication is often how prosecutors start building proof of agreement, not by a single dramatic quote, but by the way devices and people move and talk as plans take shape. The communication web is where Harvey's number draws the most attention. In trial testimony summarized by courtroom reporters, a law enforcement witness described call detail patterns in which a number attributed to Harvey appeared in contact with key figures in the investigation, including a man later convicted as one of the shooters. It's important to be precise here. Call detail records show connection between numbers, who called whom, when, and for how long. They do not reveal what was said. They don't tell you tone, purpose, or intent. When those arrows point from a number attributed to Harvey into the same small network that prosecutors said planned and carried out this murder, it becomes connective tissue a jury can feel as evidence. It doesn't answer every question, it sharpens them. As the years turned and more material surfaced in the court record, a second strand emerged: wiretaps. Filings describing new taps on a phone attributed to Harvey and alleged conversations about harming other individuals. Those are allegations made in court papers. They were not findings by a jury. Wiretaps require a judge to be shown probable cause that criminal conduct is ongoing. A wire authorization isn't granted on a hunch. For our purposes, it proves two things. First, that investigators were still building around Harvey long after the original crime. Second, that prosecutors told a court they believed the phone in his pocket remained relevant to potential criminal activity. Allegation is not proof. The probable cause is not nothing either. Then there is money, the bloodstream of a conspiracy case. During pretrial proceedings, prosecutors stated that they had subpoenaed records for a Zelle account attributed to Harvey. In open court, a jail witness testified that Donna had said Harvey would send money by Zelle. That testimony was subject to cross-examination and credibility challenges, as any jailhouse account should be, but taken together, a subpoena for a peer-to-peer transfer and testimony invoking Harvey as a source of funds, those facts redirect attention from call logs to banking entries. Money is agnostic. It either moves or it doesn't. If it transfers, and if the transfers match the talk, You have something more than a story. You have a ledger. Those alleged payments did not sit in isolation. During Donna's trial, there was testimony from jailhouse witnesses describing Donna soliciting false testimony with suggestions of compensation attached. Again, juries are rightly skeptical of informants. Prosecutors know that and typically seek corroboration. This is why financial records can become pivotal. If money corroborates a claim, the evidentiary weight shifts from something said to something happened. And if those records tie to an account attributed to Harvey, whether as sender or as the person invoked as sender, that's a potential charging lane that runs alongside and separate from the original murder conspiracy. It's the language of obstruction and witness tampering, not just conspiracy. Again, all allegations. To keep this fair, let's pause on what call detail records and cell site analysis are and what they are not. A cell phone pings a tower. It does not take an oath. Call records establish that a connection happened between two devices at a certain time for a certain duration. That's it. So when prosecutors try to prove agreement, they build mosaics, timing, volume, overlap with other events, travel data, contemporaneous texts, and where they can get it, the content of communications. In Donna's trial, law enforcement walked jurors through those layers, and that mapping placed family phones, including a number attributed to Harvey, inside a pattern the state says aligns with planning and aftermath. Defense counsel pushed back, and that's how it should work. The jury concluded the pattern mattered for Donna. Whether that pattern can be legally connected to Harvey in a way that survives reasonable doubt is the live question. There's also a moment outside the charts and timelines that is hard to ignore. Shortly after Charlie Adelson's conviction in 2023, Donna and Harvey were stopped on a jet bridge in Miami with one-way tickets to Vietnam. That stop culminated in Donna's arrest. No one charged Harvey with the crime because of that travel, but as behavior, it's the kind of fact prosecutors warehouse because it looks and feels like awareness that the walls are closing in. At trial, jurors heard recorded calls in which Donna discussed extradition and looking at places. Harvey's voice isn't on those audios that we've heard. His presence on the jet bridge, though, is a data point, one that doesn't prove guilt but does raise questions about state of mind. So what exactly would the law require if the state ever attempts to charge Harvey? Conspiracy is an agreement and an intent to commit a crime, often proven through an overt act by any member of the group. It is rarely established by a single sentence. It's proven by accumulation, communications that line up with travel and cash, coded language that a jury finds credible, and if the state can get it, a cooperator who says plainly he knew, he agreed. Based on what's public, the strongest ties in that mosaic for Harvey are communication links to certain players, movements aligned with key dates, wiretap allegations that triggered judicial authorization, and subpoenas for financial records to see whether the money matches the claims. None of that is a conviction. All of it is the kind of material prosecutors evaluate when they ask, is this chargeable? There is another lane that doesn't require proving he joined the original agreement. Accessory after the fact or obstruction. If the state can show someone helped a principal avoid detection or attempted to influence testimony by words, money, or intermediaries, that conduct can be charged independently. The jailhouse testimony about offers of compensation is already in the transcript. The question is whether financial records corroborate it in any way that a jury would trust. That's not punditry, it's accounting. It's timestamps, sender and receipt names, and whether the flow of funds lines up with the timing of the talk. because we are committed to being fair about this. We also need to say out loud why a case against Harvey would be difficult. A phone number is not a fingerprint. Call logs do not tell you who physically held the device, nor do they reveal content. It's not to say that information isn't out there and that Georgia Kaplan may be sitting on it right now. But as of our knowledge, that's what we know, is this. Jailhouse testimony is historically fraught and requires caution. Courts warn juries about it for a reason. And there's the simple fact that even after Charlie's conviction and Donna's sentence, the state has not filed charges against Harvey. That either means investigators are continuing to build or that what they have right now does not meet their standard. Those are both legitimate possibilities. The absence of a charge is not an exoneration, but it is a fact that matters. There's also the question of compelled testimony. In the lead-up to Charlie's trial, prosecutors sought to compel Donna and Harvey to answer questions under state law. The parents did not ultimately take the stand. The Fifth Amendment exists for a reason. And any competent defense lawyer would have advised caution in a criminal orbit as complicated as this one. From the public's perspective, though, the takeaway is straightforward. Investigators have been trying to pin down Harvey's account for years. That account remains largely off the record. You'll sometimes hear the phrase unindicted co-conspirator in public reporting around this case. It's important to define terms. Unindicted co-conspirator is not a charge and it's not a conviction. It's a label that can appear in filings to describe someone as a prosecutor believes participated in a conspiracy, but who was not being charged at that time. Whether and how that phrase has been used in this case over time, it does not change the bottom line. Harvey Adelson has not been indicted. That is the language that matters for legal status. So where does that leave us? If we insist on a standard that is both reasonable and real, it leaves us with a simple, sober threshold. Charge him if and only if the state can produce one of three things. First, communication content tying him directly to the planning or payment. Second, a cooperator with credibility who places him inside the agreement and whose account is corroborated by independent evidence. Third, financial records that prove witness tampering or obstruction, regardless of whether he joined the original murder plan. Those are the kinds of receipts that survive cross-examination and reasonable doubt. They're also the kind that turn public suspicion into a prosecutable case. Harvey's defenders will say the state had constructed a villain out of a husband and a father whose family was torn apart by a grinding custody dispute and a staggering crime, that his number shows up in logs because everyone involved occupied the same circle, and that his name gets pulled into new allegations because people instinctively want a neat, complete narrative. His statement in court supporting Donna's innocence and criticizing the process fits that defense. The counterpoint is not a theory, it's a list of things that are actually in the record. The birthday present language that the prosecutor said was code and a jury credited in context. The call detail patterns that place a number attributed to Harvey inside the same web as the convicted triggerman and other subjects. The wiretaps authorized by a judge based on probable cause and the subpoenas for Zelle records, along with testimony invoking Harvey as the person who would move money. Some of those facts are allegations. Some are testimony. Some are legal steps with defined standards. But all of them are entries on a real timeline. If you're feeling the tension in this story, that's because it sits right at the seam between the we can see the outline and we can prove it in court. We don't have transcripts of every call. We don't have an admission. What we have is a pattern prosecutors have already used to convict others. Motive nodded to a family objective, communications aligning with travel and cash, coded language that a jury accepted as code, and now a life sentence for the matriarch. Inside that pattern, Harvey isn't a footnote. He's a figure who keeps reappearing. Whether that reappearance becomes a charge is not a matter of vibes or outrage. It's a matter of evidence that meets a legal threshold. So the takeaway is this. Disciplined and simple. The justice system is supposed to be about proof, not emotion. But accountability starts before an arrest. It starts when we read the record with both eyes open, when we refuse to ignore the inconvenient parts, and we refuse to leap to conclusions that feel emotionally satisfying but aren't supported by evidence. In the Markel case, the court has spoken loudly about some of the players, and Harvey, the law's quiet. The receipts are not. If the state can match talk to transfers and calls to content, charge him. If not, the label that matters, unindicted, remains the only honest one to use. In a case that's already taken so much from so many, honesty is a discipline we cannot afford to not be in control of. It needs to be in control, no matter how much, no matter how out of touch, how crazy his statement was the other day in court. He is entitled to his opinion. And he may 1,000% believe it. We don't know the dynamics of that relationship, of that house, of what was going on. We could be in a world where he is just as bamboozled as many others. Just as not connected to the reality of this story as one should be, because everybody sees things through their own prism. I'm not trying to stick up for Harvey Adelson. I'm just saying, look at it from all perspectives. And that can explain behavior. Doesn't excuse it, doesn't make it right, but again, it can explain it. Give me your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. If you're not already there, search Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski to find us. Let me know your thoughts. And press subscribe while you're there as well, whether you're listening to us on the podcast platforms or on YouTube. Until next time, I'm Tony Brueski. We'll talk again real.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.